a pretty major piece of info in relation to Deadpool and Wolverine, and specifically how the film picks up after the events of Logan, has hit the net. This is a pretty major spoiler if you really think about it and don't want to know anything, so if you don't want this spoiled, please don't go any further. So as it turns out, we are actually going to be dealing with the fallout of the film Logan in Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, they do not, in fact, undo any of the events of Logan. That does not happen. I want to stress that. They are not, like, taking Logan away from dying or anything like that. Instead, they explain the continuity and what's happening with the universe after Logan's death. And they explain that in each universe, which they've already explained, there's essentially a key component character that needs to be alive, and they're sort of like the anchor of everything. They hold everything together. Well, in the Foxverse, it turns out that Logan was that anchor. And once he died, they reveal that it can take upwards of 1,000 years, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, and that universe starts to more or less evaporate. It starts to wither away and more or less go out of existence. Think of sort of like what we saw with the incursions. It literally starts to die off. That entire multiverse branch starts to die and more or less prune itself. And this is one of the whole reasons that Paradox, the guy working in the TVA, is trying to more or less fix multiple timelines, because he wants to stop these universes from collapsing and also show himself to everybody to prop himself up in the TVA into a better position so he can, well, have a better job and overlook more of what's going on. So obviously, after the events of Loki, we can probably understand that the TVA doesn't really have access to him as he's sitting there watching over everything carefully. So there's probably a power vacuum, and this is just one faction that's in it, and this is his job and what he's trying to do. Now, of course, there was another theory I recently covered that Paradox might potentially be a villain, and he's working with Cassandra Nova. So I explain that further in that video, so you guys can look that up. But overall, you know, this kind of makes sense, and I honestly like it. It's a good way to kind of tell us that, yeah, Wolverine was the anchor of that universe. Also why he was like the star of every film. So there's your explanation, and once he died in Logan, this is how we pick up the events of that without touching them.